Welcome to part 2 of replacing the expansion valve. Hey guys, welcome back. Where we left off in this video was where I was blowing out the lines with the compressed air. What I've done is, if you recall, I mentioned that I have the lines in the front of the vehicle opened. So I blew out the lines with compressed air and then went and got my nitrogen and forced some nitrogen through the lines. As I'm doing this, I'll go to the front to check for any debris that would be coming out of the line. I check for debris, I'll come back, and then I'll blow out the other line. Once that's done, I'm just gonna get rid of any of the extra stuff in the vehicle that I'm not using. It's just so happened that I have a nitrogen tank, so I was able to use nitrogen. Compressed air would work just fine if you don't have access to nitrogen. Once I got rid of the extra stuff in the back of the vehicle, I'm gonna go ahead and open this joint because there's O-rings in there. This joint is coming up from the floor and then it's connected to these two pieces of pipe. So I wanted to check the O-ring and see if there's anything that's blocking these holes. So I'll open up these joints and then I'm gonna go check my expansion valve. So I've got the two expansion valve. I'm gonna compare it side by side, make sure everything matches. From the holes to the front, the piston inside, the holes in the back, on the bottom, everything else matches perfect. That way there's no question that it will work. So I'm doing a dry fit right now to make sure that the threads can thread back in. If you don't know how to reassemble something back, I strongly recommend you take a photo of the direction. You can always reference that to put something back together. So I'm dry fitting this to make sure everything screws in and thread in properly, because there's a front and a back for this expansion valve. I've got this O-ring set from Harbor Freight. I'm not sure if it's like $10 or $12, but it's a O-ring set. I don't know if it's a 270 piece O-ring set. So I popped out the O-rings from the old expansion valve and I'm trying to find an exact match from the old to the new. So these O-rings are to seal the ends of the pipe. So once I've got that O-ring matched up, I'm gonna insert it on the end of the refrigerant lines, the pipes. I'm gonna place these O-rings on the end because that way it fits firm on the expansion valve. Once I've got that done, I'm gonna do another dry fit to make sure that this expansion valve fits correctly on the two lines with the O-rings in place. Here you see I'm doing my dry fit again to make sure everything works and lines up and screws in correctly on that side of the expansion valve. Once I got done with that side of the expansion valve, I pulled my evaporator and I'm gonna do a dry fit to make sure that this these two lines are able to connect correctly. If you recall, I had twisted one of the lines, and when that line got twisted, it misaligned the I guess the piping to that expansion valve. It misaligned the piping to it. So I'm going to do a dry fit and thread everything in to make sure that the fit is okay. It was really difficult to get the thread started, I guess because of the misalignment. I was not able to get the thread started right away. I had to try over and over and ensure that I don't cross thread the threads and damage any threading. So I went back and forth a few times just to ensure that I can get these threads or nuts threaded on correctly on this expansion valve. You can see I'm using the crescent wrench to hold this expansion valve and kind of shaping those pipes to get those nuts threaded back into the expansion valve. So it's difficult to hold it by hand, so I use the crescent wrench, the bigger crescent wrench, to move or twist the expansion valve to where I want it exactly. The goal is not to damage these two lines because I don't want to buy a new evaporator for this unit. As you can see here, after multiple tries, I was finally able to get these two nuts threaded in to the expansion valve. So I tightened them down correctly, as tight as I possibly could. I'm sure there's a torque spec for it, but that I didn't know offhand, so I just gave them a good snug with my wrench. Now what I'm doing is I'm clearing or prepping the area back to put my entire blower assembly in. I cleared up the area, tuck any wire that needs to be tucked back against the wall, and reset everything. Once that's done, I'm gonna go ahead and insert my evaporator back into the blower assembly. Now that I've got the area cleaned up to put this blower back in place, I'm gonna insert my evaporator back into the slot, insert my heat exchanger, my heater core back into the unit itself. Make sure it's oriented in the correct direction. I'm gonna move forward with a final assembly of this blower housing and insert it back in the correct position against the sidewall. So join me and follow along as we do part 3, where I do a final assembly, connection, pressure test, leak test of this unit and get it up and running. So like, subscribe, share, follow along for the next video for part 3 as I conclude the replacement of this expansion valve into this vehicle. So follow along and look out for part 3. Thanks for watching.